What if I told you that one of the biggest political shockwaves in North American history might be brewing right now, quietly, secretly, behind closed doors? That's right. There's a growing theory gaining traction online, whispered in political circles, and quietly discussed in Alberta's coffee shops and backrooms, that Alberta could become the 51st state of the United States of America. Sounds insane, right? But stay with me, because this might just be the most explosive political transformation no one saw coming. And if even half of what's being said is true, it could change everything. Alberta, Canada's oil-rich powerhouse, home to the Rocky Mountains, cowboy hats, and some of the most fiercely independent-minded citizens in the country, has long felt like a political outsider in its own nation. It's not just a cultural thing. It's economic. It's ideological. It's historical. Over the last decade, tensions between Alberta and Ottawa have hit fever pitch. Many Albertans feel like they are treated as little more than a piggy bank for Eastern elites. Federal environmental regulations, carbon taxes, pipeline delays, it's all added fuel to the fire. And now, according to some insiders, that fire might be burning hot enough to spark a once unthinkable move, secession from Canada and joining the United States. Let's start with what's fueling this talk. First up, money. Alberta's economy has been throttled by federal climate policies that are deeply unpopular in the West. Oil and gas is the backbone of Alberta's prosperity, and yet it's an industry that's been increasingly handcuffed by federal mandates. There's a growing belief among industry leaders and citizens alike that Alberta's potential is being smothered by Ottawa's agenda. But imagine Alberta aligned with a country that embraces fossil fuels, incentivizes domestic energy production, and provides the infrastructure for massive exports to global markets. That's the dream some Albertans are chasing, economic freedom under the stars and stripes. Then there's ideology. Alberta, culturally and politically, has more in common with states like Texas, Montana, or Wyoming than it does with Toronto or Vancouver. We are talking rugged individualism, small government, gun rights, and low taxes. According to leaked internal polls, nearly 30% of Albertans might support statehood if it ever came to a vote. That's no fringe fantasy, that's a political pressure cooker. And while most Canadian leaders have dismissed it as pure fiction, US politicians, some are listening very carefully. Now here's where things get really wild. Multiple sources, anonymous, but consistent, claim that informal discussions have already taken place between Alberta officials and certain US congressional aides. According to these whispers, these meetings included talk of economic transition plans, dual citizenship models, and even the groundwork for Alberta's potential legislative representation in Washington. 2 senators. 5 to 6 House seats. A state constitution modeled on American values, but customized for Alberta's unique character. Think about that for a second. And it doesn't stop there. Some rumors border on the surreal. A hidden underground command center supposedly built near Calgary, with US funding. A direct oil pipeline route negotiated in secret that would bypass Canadian regulation entirely, pumping Alberta crude straight to American refineries. Joint military training operations on Alberta soil that no one seems to be talking about. And, perhaps most chilling, a covert communication system linking Edmonton directly with Washington, D.C., allegedly installed under the guise of disaster preparedness. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But isn't that what they said about Snowden? About Watergate? About Brexit? Publicly, both the Canadian and American governments have denied everything. Official statements call the rumors baseless, absurd, or fabricated. But actions speak louder than press releases. Just last month, Canadian Prime Minister MarkCarney issued an unusually forceful statement directed at Alberta, warning of serious constitutional consequences for any provincial entity contemplating political realignment outside the Confederation. That wasn't a reaction to internet chatter. That sounded like damage control. It sounded like fear. In the US, meanwhile, responses are mixed. Some political voices on the right see Alberta's potential accession as a golden opportunity, more oil, more land, more leverage. Others fear the geopolitical chaos that could follow. Would this fracture the North American alliance? Would NATO remain intact if Canada destabilized internally? Could Quebec follow suit? Would British Columbia cut ties next? One thing's for sure, the ripple effects would be massive. And the people. That's where things get messy. In Alberta, public opinion is sharply divided. Protests have broken out both in favour and against statehood. City halls are getting flooded with calls. Town meetings are packed with residents demanding answers. Social media is a war zone of flags, maps, and conspiracies. Meanwhile, in cities like Toronto and Montreal, the very idea of Alberta joining the US is considered nothing short of treason. Some online commentators are even calling for military intervention should Alberta attempt to break away. And yet, history tells us crazy things happen all the time. Texas was once its own independent republic. Hawaii was a sovereign kingdom before annexation. Alaska was Russian territory before it became the last frontier. None of those transitions were smooth. Some involved bloodshed. Others, manipulation. All required major shifts in public sentiment and geopolitical will. But Alberta is different. It's not a foreign land. It's a core part of Canada's economy and identity. Losing it wouldn't be like a state splitting off, it would be like Canada losing its economic engine, its energy heartland, and a huge portion of its GDP. The Canadian dollar could tumble. Federal budgets could implode. National unity might collapse entirely. And there's an angle nobody's talking about: indigenous sovereignty. Many of Alberta's First Nations communities have deep-rooted treaty rights with the Canadian government, rights that could be jeopardized or voided entirely if Alberta changed jurisdictions. Would those communities have a voice in a statehood referendum? Would they be given veto power? Or would their rights be bulldozed in the rush to redraw borders? Some Indigenous leaders have already begun private discussions and are reportedly preparing legal strategies to block any attempt at secession. This could turn into a legal war that makes Brexit look simple. And what about healthcare? Alberta currently operates under Canada's single-payer system. If it joined the United States, residents would likely transition to a privatized model with insurance companies at the helm. For some, that's a nightmare. For others, it's freedom of choice. Either way, it would be one of the most difficult and controversial transitions imaginable. Same with education, law enforcement, even food standards. The integration process would be massive, chaotic, and fiercely contested. But here's something even stranger. Newly leaked documents suggest that Alberta's government has conducted internal scenario planning exercises, including projections for border checkpoints, customs protocols, and even diplomatic roadmaps. One file, labeled Operation Buffalo, reportedly outlines a phased strategy for Alberta to declare independence, maintain trade with Canada temporarily, and then negotiate entry into the United States over a 5-year timeline. If that's true, then this is no longer theoretical. This is real strategy, executed in the shadows. And if you're wondering whether this is just fringe noise or something bigger, here's a detail that should raise your eyebrows. Several journalists investigating Alberta's statehood rumors have reported being followed, harassed, or having their devices tampered with. One major outlet allegedly shelved a breaking story after receiving a quiet call from a federal agency warning of national security risks. What kind of story gets buried like that? Who stands to lose or gain if this truth gets out? But perhaps the most explosive claim comes from a whistleblower who recently contacted multiple independent news platforms. This anonymous source alleges that a multi-billion-dollar investment fund has been quietly assembled by American and Canadian business elites to support Alberta's transition. The money, they say, is meant for lobbying, legal fees, infrastructure upgrades, and political campaigns designed to make statehood not only possible, but inevitable. If that's true, then this isn't just speculation anymore. It's a blueprint. A ticking clock. So where does this all go? Honestly, no one knows. Maybe it fizzles out. Maybe Ottawa cracks down hard. Maybe Washington backs off. Or maybe, just maybe, we are witnessing the opening act of something unprecedented. A political earthquake that will reshape North America's map forever. Imagine waking up in a world where the Canadian flag no longer flies over Alberta. Where school children pledge allegiance to the US flag in Calgary classrooms. Where the RCMP is replaced by state troopers. Where Alberta senators speak on the floor of the US Capitol. Where the Canadian Rockies are protected by the National Park Service instead of Parks Canada. It sounds like fiction, but what if it's not? The signs are there. The tensions are real. The stakes are higher than ever. And history has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. So let me leave you with this. If you lived in Alberta right now, would you vote to become the 51st state of America? Would you risk the political fallout, the cultural upheaval, the identity crisis, for a shot at economic freedom, energy independence, and a new national flag? Or would you stand firm, defend Canadian unity, and fight to keep Alberta true north and strong? Tell me in the comments. This is your chance to weigh in on what could be the most radical political shift of our lifetime. If you found this story compelling, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share it. There's a lot more coming, and trust me, this isn't the last you'll hear about Alberta's rumored breakaway. Stay curious. Stay skeptical. And I'll see you in the next video.